Well, friends, family, and followers of Arise, thank you so much for tuning in. It's my pleasure to be meeting with Eric Cohu, the founder of the Friends of the IFL. The IFL, for those of you that don't know, is the Israeli Football League. So, going to be a pretty interesting one here. Eric, thank you so much for meeting with us. What is the IFL?
Appreciate you having me, first of all. But the Israeli Football League is the offspring of a group of guys about 15 years ago that decided they wanted to play American football. Now, flag football has been going on in Israel since the 80s under the American Football of Israel. And these guys started the Israel Football League, and the way things turned out, I was able to be there on the front end because it's unique how this story came about, but I had a group of college and high school students from West Tennessee, where I was coaching football at the time, on an Israel tour. And I met the commissioner, and he literally, you're a football coach, and we're trying to start football. And the next thing you know, I'm on the internet. Because of the advent of the internet and how things developed, I was able to start having consulting times and consulting conferences with the coaches and the players here, and trying to just train them on some basic football things. But the Israel Football League started in 2007, and been working with them as a coaching consultant all the way to now on the board of the Friends of the IFL in the United States. And probably the high point for me was coaching the Israeli national team in Italy in 2016 season. That was a real exciting time for me, being the offensive coordinator for the Israeli national team that season.
I love it. So obviously this merits quite a few interesting questions, and I'm very excited to just get a little bit more of your story. Of course, growing up here in Israel, when we said football, coming from the United States, and anytime I said football, of course people here assumed that it was soccer, yes. Right? Over here you call football soccer, football. So how does Eric Cohu, and I know a little bit of your story, I've known you for several years, I know that you're from the Ozarks. Yes. How does Eric Cohu from the Ozarks end up here in Israel? I know you said you're on a tour. How did you end up really caring about investing yourself in football in Israel?
Yeah, that's a great question, first of all. Football has been an integral part of my life, and as in the United States, football is just part of our culture. And about 20 years ago, I just really fell in love with the nation state of Israel. And being a man of faith, I wanted to come over here, I wanted to see things. And then when I got here, I realized, every American should see what's going on in Israel. Such a startup nation, as the book title says, and so there's so much going on here, and fell in love with the country, and that got me started. As I said a while ago, that met some guys that were starting football. They found out I was a football coach, and quickly became a consultant for the Israel Football League. And my love for Israel's kind of got what started, how I got connected. And then, of course, my trade, being football coach, allowed me to kind of marry two loves: love football, love of Israel, into a passion of mine that I can help build the football community here in Israel. And that's something that just means a lot to me because of what football's meant to me in my life, and my love for Israel.
So love for football, love for Israel. And I've heard you talk before a little about why football is so important to you and how it can affect culture and has affected culture in the United States. Why do you think football is important here in Israel?
Well, I'm obviously biased because I love the sport. I think it's the best sport to teach how to handle adversity. I think that football teaches grit, resilience, two terms that I think are very connected with the Israeli people. If you think about the history of the Jewish people and the history of Israel, two terms that epitomize their history are grit and resilience. And football is such a tough sport that it takes a lot of perseverance, a lot of endurance. When we start the season in the South, it'll be 100 degrees with high humidity. When we end the season at the state championships in December, it may be 20, 30 degrees. You're playing and practicing in snow. So just the physical elements, and then the physical nature of the sport being an aggressive contact collision sport, it really pushes a person to their edge, which I think's healthy for us as learning to overcome adversity. Another thing it's done in the American culture for over a century. I mean, football's over 140 years old in the United States, and is part of our culture, part of our community building, because it could bridge both sides of the tracks, as we say in the South, the poor, the rich. It was instrumental in the civil rights movement of bridging, the whites and blacks, and just bringing races together, different socioeconomic backgrounds together. And it's a great equalizer on the field, because one thing that I fell in love with the game with years ago, over 40 years ago, was the fact that it's an equalizer. And I realized I'm not a big guy, but I realized that I could be good at the sport if I was tough enough and could endure enough, because it is a sport of perseverance. It's a sport of just deciding you want to keep grinding it out, keep fighting, keep being physical. So it was more of an internal heart, mental thing. So as that's part of the American culture historically, I feel like it's a great sport for the Israeli culture. If you think about, Israel has such a high impetus on military and security. Every citizen goes to the military after high school, and the United States military recruiters will tell you that they target and call high school football players as one of their number one recruiting targets, because they know if they can handle high school football, they can handle the military. So it's something that's very strategic too, as well. I love the game because it's very tactical, very strategic. When you look at soccer and basketball, which are both great team sports, very popular here in Israel, of course, you have the same body type, every player's got the same tactical and technical responsibilities. In football, every player's got a different tactical responsibility, a different technique, and a different body type, different athleticism, which I think makes it universal for any young person wanting to play.
Let's go back to talking a little bit about the opportunity and how football can bring people of diverse backgrounds and ethnicities and even religions together. Of course, here in Israel, but I would broaden that to, of course, the entire Middle East, where at a young age, children are taught how to feel about people that are different than themselves, and in many cases, not in a positive way. And obviously, I know you've seen in the United States how football has been able to bring different people groups together. What are some examples? Do you have some examples of what that looks like here in Israel, what it has looked like up till now, and also where would you like to see it go? Where do you see the greatest opportunity here in Israel on that front?
Yeah, I definitely believe that any team sport is good for the development of working with others. A basketball team may only have 10 players, 12 players though, so I get used to their personalities, that sort of thing. In football, we may have 70, 100 players. That's a big locker room. There's a lot of personalities. There's a lot of variation in socioeconomic backgrounds and race diversity and religious diversity. And I think that's really good for the development, to learn to communicate, learn to find commonality and community with people that are different. So some examples here in Israel is on the national team that I coached, we had Arabs and we had Jews, both on the same team, and at the common goal. And so that's what I love about team sports in general, is we're all, in it for the team victory. and it reduces some of the selfishness that tends to come with just an individual sport. But we have, throughout the history of the Israel Football League, we've had both Jews and Arabs, we've had both secular and religious all on the same teams, and I think that is a way to bridge some of the gaps that we see in the media as these groups can't coexist. Well, sure, they can coexist and they can work for a common goal, because it happens all the time in business and in sports. And I think that's one of the bridges and strong proponents of athletic events and sports. And where I'd like to see it go, I would like to see more diversity in the high school teams here in Israel. Like to see that blossom and develop into more Arab players, and because they are more in the minority. It's mostly Jewish players that are on both the adult teams and the high school teams. But I think that that can easily be done, because I think kids are drawn to the sport once they have an avenue or access to it, because it is, when I look out on the field and I see a soccer player or I see a basketball player and they don't look like me because of my height or because of my speed level, because of my body type. In football, I can turn on the TV and see there's really short, fast guys, and there's really some big guys, and so it allows me to play even though I don't have maybe a higher skill level that it takes for, like in America, baseball, or in Israel, soccer or basketball. So I think that's helpful because kids can be attracted to the game because there's a spot for them. Kids and people want identity. They want belonging. They want to belong. And so that's something that really gives identity to young people.
It just sounds to me like there's so many correlations between what we do at Arise. We're trying to solve some of the same problems. Bringing people together. Of course, our lane is business and commerce, and your lane is athletics, it's sport, it's football, but we're trying to solve a lot of the same problems. And of course, the lessons that you can learn as people come together for a common cause are vast. So where do we go from here? Where do you see IFL going? If your dreams were to come true for the Israeli Football League, what would that look like in 5 years from now or 10 years from now?
Israel actually has an advantage right now with football, because the people that are playing football in Israel are doing it for the love of the game. And that's what got me started over 40 years ago, loving the game. In the United States, the NFL, Division I football, those are the biggest money makers in the world. I mean, they're billion-dollar industries for sporting world. And I know soccer aggregately is bigger because there's a professional league in almost every nation state of the world. But pound for pound, the NFL, college football are huge economic endeavors, but the problem is a little bit lost their way through the money, and through you can lose your love of the game with all the money involved. Well, Israel is right now at the cusp of something that could be really good from a football standpoint, because they get all the benefits of the purity of young people, and even guys in their 20s and 30s that just love the game and play the game for the love of the game. But in 5 years, Israel could easily have 20 to 30, maybe even 40 high school age, teams, clubs. What happens if I play club soccer or basketball, if I'm not the prodigy, if I'm not the best, then I usually get weeded out at a pretty young age. So in Israel, we have a lot of guys that are 12 to 17 before that military time frame that aren't doing anything sport-wise. They're not in club soccer or club basketball anymore, and that's the perfect time to play football, in that middle school, high school age time. So I'd love to see 30, 40 high school teams. I'd like to see more. We've got a couple youth teams, elementary age right now. I'd like to see more development at the elementary level, because that'll build a love and a culture that, hey, I grew up playing and that sort of thing. And then with the adults, then it naturally will grow into more more than the 8 teams they've got right now. So you've got the potential, I believe, in 5 to 10 years to have 20 to 40 high school teams, 10 to 15 youth, elementary age teams, and maybe as 12 to 15 adult teams as the sport continues to grow. And I think the point of the vision I would have is to keep the main thing, which is the love of the game. Why am I playing this? Because it's character development, because I love the game. It teaches me resilience, it teaches me grit, it teaches me teamwork, and it teaches me how to work with people that are different than I am, both racially, both socioeconomically, all those things.
Yeah, so it's safe to say that football has obviously made a difference in the United States. There's no question that it has impacted culture and made the difference in the lives of individuals and families and teams and people of diverse ethnicities in every walk of life. Certainly, I don't think it's too far a stretch to believe that football can make a difference here in Israel. So, if you're feeling compelled as I am to somehow get involved, if you're listening to Eric's story and the story of the IFL, and you would like to play a role in this story, whether it be coaching or whether it be financial support or whatever it may be, I would just encourage you to reach out. You can reach out directly to the Friends of the IFL, the Friends of the Israel Football League. You can reach out to us directly at Arise, and we'd be happy to make that connection. But don't wait. There's opportunity now, and I would love to be able to play a role in helping Eric's dreams come true, in helping the Israel Football League's dreams come true, and really seeing that 20 to 40 teams, within 5 to 10 years, and bringing people together and accomplishing all the things that you guys are accomplishing through football. Eric, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us. As always, I enjoy speaking with you. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I just hope that you'll enjoy the rest of your time here in Israel.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
There are many small businesses in Israel that are creating amazing products that never make it to the shelves of the stores where you shop. Unfortunately, there's an insidious campaign growing around the world calling to boycott Israel. And these small business owners see their potential market shrinking from day to day. What can we do about this? So Arise exists to make meaningful connections between friends like you in the international community and the economy of Israel. When you sign up to become a member of the Arise Alliance, we will send you on a quarterly basis a gift box filled with cosmetic products, culinary products, fashion products, amazing stuff made in Israel. Your family's gonna love this. Your favorite time every quarter is gonna be to stand around and discover what did you receive this quarter from Israel. And it's just a great way to weave Israeli products and the reality of Israel into your everyday life. Make sure you become a member today and help support small businesses and create jobs in Israel. Thank you.